Everyone knows the classic Superman journey. The guy throws on the cape, lifts buildings, saves the Earth, and heads back to the Daily Planet without a hair out of place. Even if you've never picked up a comic book, you know exactly how the drill goes. But what if the Man of Steel's greatest challenge wasn't taking down space villains or Lex Luthor? Clark Kent's true impossible mission is moving to a small town to raise 2 teenage sons. That's exactly where the madness of the series Superman and Lois comes in. It's a show that brings back that sweet childhood nostalgia, but drops the hero right into the middle of a high-stakes family drama. And honestly, the format works ridiculously well. This isn't just another mindless punch fest. This story has a ton of heart, perfectly blending global threats with jealousy, marital stress, and very real, very human battles against illness. If I had to sum up the core message of this show, I'd say this: stopping the apocalypse is just another Tuesday, but the real challenge is trying not to fail your own family. So today on the channel, Superman and Lois, the ultimate reality check in the life of a superhero. Everyone already knows Clark Kent's story: the ship crashing in Smallville, the adoption by the Kents, the discovery of his powers, the move to Metropolis. The twist here is his married life with Lois Lane and the package deal that comes with it. Teenage twins Jonathan, the popular jock, and Jordan, the antisocial kid. Clark tries to split his time between being a father and saving the world. He literally freezes an entire harbor to stop a nuclear reactor from melting down. Just routine stuff. But at home, things are tense. Jordan is furious because his dad missed his therapy session, and before Clark can fix things, he gets the worst call possible. His mother, Martha, has suffered a stroke. He crosses the country in seconds, but arrives too late. At the funeral in Smallville, old friends reappear, including Lana Lang and her daughter Sarah. The twins are immediately drawn to the girl and decide to snoop around the farm's barn with her, a place that was always off limits. An accident happens. Heavy pipes fall on the brothers, but miraculously they walk away without a scratch. Suspicious, the two return to the barn and find nothing less than their dad's spaceship. When Clark and Lois arrive, there's no hiding it anymore. Clark lifts a pickup truck 50 feet in the air to prove the truth. Instead of thinking it's awesome, the boys are furious over years of lies. To make matters worse, a stranger attacks another reactor. Clark goes to investigate and takes a beating in the skies over Metropolis, culminating in a kryptonite dagger to the chest in mid-freefall. While he plummets, a teenage brawl breaks out at a bonfire. Jonathan is taking a heavy beating, which makes Jordan lose control and shoot heat vision from his eyes. Surprise! The troubled son is the one with powers. Clark manages to recover in time, returns to his sons, and decides it's time for a life change. They buy the farm back and leave Metropolis. Far away in the Arctic, the stranger who stabbed Superman reveals his name to his ship's artificial intelligence, Captain Luthor. Life in the countryside seems peaceful, but adapting to the Kent farm starts off rocky. With Jordan manifesting dangerous abilities, Clark and Lois decide to keep him home for his own safety. The kid's reaction? A standard dramatic teenage meltdown, of course. Meanwhile, our mysterious Captain Luthor breaks into a facility in Moldova looking for kryptonite. The guy is absolutely obsessed with stopping Superman before he destroys this world. Trying to help his son, Clark takes Jordan to the Fortress of Solitude. Using a crystal from the ship, they activate an interactive hologram of Jor-El. Initially, the Kryptonian grandfather is thrilled with the boy, but tests later reveal the harsh reality. Jordan's powers are pitiful, not even 1/100th of his father's strength. Once again, the kid storms off. Away from the ice, Lois picks a fight with Morgan Edge, the tycoon promising to save the town, who also happens to own the newspaper she works for. She tries to warn the locals at a town meeting, but the people, desperate for jobs, defend the billionaire. To make matters worse, Edge rewrites Lois's investigative piece, turning it into a corporate PR pamphlet. Lois doesn't take it lying down. She slams her resignation letter on his desk and goes to work for the small local paper in Smallville. The climax hits when Luthor attacks the Department of Defense, DOD. Clark flies over, beats down the villain, and rips his helmet off, only to discover he was fighting an empty robot. The real Luthor had already been there and left a warning for General Lane, a set of dog tags with the Superman crest and the word hell carved on the back. And his fear makes sense. Through flashbacks, we discover that on Luthor's home Earth, Superman wore a black suit and coldly incinerated soldiers, and Luthor is willing to do anything to make sure history doesn't repeat itself. With tempers flaring a little less on the farm, the boys start questioning how their dad's enhanced senses work. Clark swears he doesn't use his super hearing to spy on them, which lasts exactly until the first shove at school. Jordan gets into a spat with Sarah's ex, Jonathan steps in, and guess what? Clark appears out of nowhere in the hallway. It's obvious the kids realize they were being watched. Lois tells her husband to give them some space. Trying to fight back against the bullies, Jordan decides to join the football team. With his slightly enhanced strength, he destroys the opponents in practice. The coach is thrilled, and surprisingly, even the team's bullies start respecting him. Clark watches from afar, worried his son will expose himself, but Jonathan gives it to him straight. It's the first time his brother has seemed genuinely happy about something. Clark caves, but with that classic, overprotective dad condition. He becomes the team's new assistant coach. Off the field, Lois continues her crusade against Morgan Edge. A woman named Sharon seeks her out, claiming her son disappeared after taking a job at his industries. Lois tracks the woman down to a cheap motel, but makes that fatal thriller movie mistake and walks into a room with a busted door. Inside, she's attacked by a henchman named Subject 11. Lois hits her emergency beacon, and fractions of a second later, Superman crashes through the brick wall. The problem is, the henchman goes toe-to-toe with the Man of Steel, even knocking him out for a moment before Clark uses his freeze breath to win the fight and get Sharon to the hospital. The fact that Morgan Edge has someone with super strength on his payroll would be bad enough, but at night, when Subject 11 flees down the highway, he's intercepted by Edge's personal assistant. Without blinking, the woman shoots heat vision from her eyes and incinerates the henchman on the spot. Yeah, the rabbit hole in Smallville goes a lot deeper.
It's done. I'll call it team.
6 years in the past, Morgan Edge was already up to no good, finding a glowing red object in a crater. Cut to the present, and the guys in Smallville acting like the savior of the town. He even invites Kyle and Lana to dinner, and Kyle, who is the tycoon's biggest fanboy, accepts immediately. The catch is that at dinner, Edge blatantly flirts with Lana right in front of her husband, and Kyle doesn't even bat an eye. At the football game, Jordan takes the field terrified, but ends up using his powers to tackle an opponent yards away. General Lane, Clark's father-in-law, watches the whole thing from the bleachers. He warns that this little game will attract unwanted attention, and that Superman's absence in Metropolis is making criminals much bolder. One of those criminals, Thaddeus Kilgrave, proves exactly that by blowing up a prisoner transport using explosive chewing gum, classic villain style. While Lois tries to expose Edge's schemes at the town mine and butts heads with his assistant Leslie Larr, things spin out of control with the kids. The broken arm of Tag, the kid who got hurt when Jordan used his heat vision weeks ago, starts vibrating non-stop. He flees a party into the woods, desperate. Superman takes a sonic beating from Kilgrave in Metropolis, but when his sons trigger the emergency beacon, Superdad handles everything in the blink of an eye, knocks out the villain, and flies to Smallville to save Tag, flying the kid up into the atmosphere to pass him out from oxygen deprivation. General Lane discovers that Jordan's heat vision was indeed to blame for making Tag inhale a dangerous substance, and sends the kid to a special school, basically playing Professor X. Lois and Clark kick Lane out of their house for always putting the weight of the world above his family, but Edge keeps winning. Besides getting the town's approval to excavate, he and Leslie find a secret cave full of X-kryptonite, enough to build an army. Clark is thrilled about the Harvest Festival, trying to sell the idea of rural fun to teenage boys who used to live in the big city. Jonathan is down in the dumps because his girlfriend just dumped him over the phone, so the vibe at home isn't the best. Lois runs into Sharon Powell and her son Derek, who had been missing. The guy acts bizarrely, tells a completely full of holes story about blacking out at work, and Lois, with her sharp journalistic instincts, doesn't buy a word of it, and rightfully so. Minutes later, out of everyone's sight, Derek has a breakdown and shoots heat vision, setting the community center on fire. Clark, always on duty, saves Lana's husband from the flames and quietly puts out the fire using his super breath. All of this makes Clark reminisce about his teenage days in Smallville, when his mom, Martha, encouraged him to find his purpose by giving him a wooden box with his father's crystal. It's the classic hero's journey, but in the present, things are literally catching fire. Reporter Chrissy tracks Derek to an abandoned building, where Edge's assistant puts him in a machine that injects yellow energy into the guy. Superman crashes through the roof, and the chase begins. Derek flies, shoots fire everywhere, and even calls Superman by his Kryptonian name. But Marcus Bridgewater, who is actually Captain Luthor in disguise, appears out of nowhere and fires a missile at the two. After the fall, Derek turns to ash, destroyed by his own power. Back at the festival, Edge plays the town hero by donating money to replace everything that burned and even dedicates a bench to the late Martha Kent. Lois and Clark are moved by the tribute. Meanwhile, watching from afar, Luthor throws a piece of equipment against the wall when his AI reminds him that this world's Lois isn't the Lois he was married to. Yep, the guy lost his wife on his home Earth. To cap off the night, while walking home alone in the dark, Jordan is brutally attacked by none other than Tag, who has returned superpowered and looking for answers. The beating Tag is giving Jordan only ends when the kid hits the emergency beacon. Superman arrives, Tag panics, runs away at the speed of light, and even manages to derail a train in the process. Dad saves the train, of course, but the kid gets away. With a bruised face, Jordan still insists on playing the big football game against Metropolis. Clark hesitates, but lets him. Terrible idea. Jordan's powers start glitching at the worst possible moment. His super hearing short circuits, and his eyes threaten to shoot laser beams right in the middle of the field. Clark's solution? He puts his hand over his son's face and tells him to unleash the heat vision right then and there, directly into his palm of steel, in the middle of a packed stadium. Amazingly, nobody notices a thing. Meanwhile, Lois and Marcus, Luthor in disguise, break into Morgan Edge's new mine. Marcus's ordinary reporter disguise goes down the drain when he pulls futuristic tools out of his pocket, cuts a hole in the stone wall, and finds the X-Kryptonite stockpile. When Edge's assistant shows up shooting lasers from her eyes, Marcus pulls out a high-tech weapon and knocks the villainess out, saving Lois's life. Obviously, the journalist now knows the guy is hiding an arsenal of secrets. Chaos truly takes over when Tag accidentally hurts Sarah during a vibrational panic attack. General Lane orders the army to shoot the kid with live ammo, forcing Superman to jump in front and take kryptonite shrapnel to the chest. With his eyes glowing with rage, he stands up and forces the military to stand down. But the real tragedy of the night happens far away from the military. Provoked by the rival team from Metropolis in a parking lot, Jordan loses control again and throws a super strength punch. Jonathan throws himself in front to protect his brother and ends up with his arm crushed. Season over for him. At home, Clark gives the classic lecture about responsibility, but the worst is yet to come. In the middle of a conversation with his mom, Jordan starts having severe seizures and collapses. Wasting no time, Clark grabs his son and flies desperately toward the Fortress of Solitude. Clark rushes to the Fortress of Solitude with Jordan suffering from an excruciating headache. Jor-El's diagnosis is simple. The kid's super hearing has awakened, and he's going to have to learn to control it the hard way. As a temporary fix, Jordan puts on noise-canceling headphones at max volume and skips school, leaving Jonathan with the thankless job of covering up his lies once again. Meanwhile, Lois manages to track down Captain Luthor's RV. They set up a meeting, but the guy is still full of secrets. The conversation is cut short when they discover that a major shipment of Morgan Edges is on the move. Luthor intercepts the heavily armed truck, grabs the X-Kryptonite from the truck, and uses it as a bargaining chip with Lois to secure a meeting with the Man of Steel. It turns out Luthor's past is brutal. On his Earth, an evil Superman destroyed Metropolis and murdered Lois Lane in cold blood, who happened to be Luthor's wife. Knowing this, it's easy to understand the guy's rage. He sets a trap with red solar radiation, takes down Superman, and reveals his true identity, John Henry Irons. With a hammer worthy of Thor, he begins to mercilessly beat Clark. Miles away, Jordan tries to focus his hearing, ends up listening to Jonathan and Sarah having a moment of connection, and freaks out with jealousy. But the brothers' fight stops immediately when Jordan hears their dad being killed. The twins steal Clark's truck. Jonathan slams on the gas and rams the car straight into Irons. The villain goes straight into DOD custody. After the scare, the parents finally come clean to the kids about everything that's going on. The cherry on top goes to Lana, who discovers that Edge's new leadership program is just a front to recruit test subjects for X-Kryptonite. She tries to protect her husband by keeping him out of it, but Edge has already made it clear he has other plans for Kyle. In the interrogation room with Superman, John Henry Irons finally lays his cards on the table. He confesses to coming from a parallel Earth destroyed by Kryptonians and talks about his marriage to Lois and the daughter they had, Natalie. This information crashes head-on with our world's Lois, who broke into Irons' RV with Jonathan to look for clues. She finds photos of Natalie and is visibly shaken. Trying to help his mom, John goes back to the RV alone, but trips the defense system and activates a lethal countdown. Superman arrives in a fraction of a second and catches the hail of bullets, saving the boy.
One.
Lois's reaction is terrifying. She completely loses her temper and screams at Jonathan in a way we've never seen before. Clark realizes something is very wrong and suggests she talk to her old therapist at the DoD. The truth that comes to light is heavy. Years ago, Lois had a miscarriage. It was a girl, and her name would have been Natalie. Seeing that a version of herself had the chance to raise this daughter brought all the grief rushing back. She and John talk, clear the air, and forgiveness comes in an emotional hug. Across town, Kyle's pride is wounded because Lana lied, saying Edge didn't think he was qualified for the program. As petty retaliation, he doesn't show up for Sarah's musical audition. Lucky for the girl, Jordan takes over the piano and saves the performance. At the military HQ, things spiral out of control when one of the soldiers reveals himself to be an undercover agent for Edge, and with powers. He tries to free Irons and engages in combat with Superman right in the middle of the kryptonite weapons room. Irons defeats the soldier, but Clark collapses, weakened by the environment. Irons has the chance to finish the job, but Lois steps in and convinces him that this Superman is different. Irons backs down, and Clark puts the pieces together. Edge isn't just giving people powers, he's implanting Kryptonian consciousnesses into humans. A war is coming, and Irons hits the road, knowing they might need each other soon. The synthetic kryptonite gas hasn't left Superman's system. He tries to stop a bank robbery in Mexico, and actually gets taken down by regular bullets. Lois places all the blame on her father for creating a weapon capable of killing her husband, but the situation gets much worse. Clark ended up transmitting the infection to Jordan like a virus. The boy starts uncontrollably sneezing ice, and his lungs begin to collapse. Clark flies him to the Fortress of Solitude, where Jor-El's intelligence panel uses intense laser beams to burn the kryptonite out of his body. It's a brutal procedure, but it solves the problem. Meanwhile, Lois goes straight for the confrontation. She marches into Morgan Edge's office and lays her cards on the table, stating she knows he's using X-kryptonite to put Kryptonian minds into human bodies. The villain plays dumb, but as soon as she turns her back, he sends his goons to the Kent farm to silence her for good. Lois, Jonathan, and Sam Lane are at the farm waiting for news when the attack begins. General Lane uses his kryptonite gas gun to hold off the assassins at the door, buying time for Jonathan to run to the barn and grab Irons' solar weapons that he had hidden. It's the perfect moment for Kyle to show up offering help. The problem is, his eyes glow red. Kyle is the newest transformed recruit, ready to execute the family. Seconds before disaster strikes, Superman lands hard and throws Kyle far away. As the dust settles, the final pieces of Edge's plan fall into place for Lois. The reason he targeted Smallville is that the local population has spent their entire lives exposed to the X-kryptonite from the mines. They are the only humans whose bodies can handle the alien transfer without dying in the process. The icing on the cake comes in the desert. Edge calls Superman for a chat, but this time wearing a black Kryptonian suit. Not only does he float in front of Clark, showing total control, but he drops the ultimate revelation. He is a true-born Kryptonian, arrived on Earth around the same time as Kal-El, and calls Superman his brother. Out in the desert, the dust has barely settled when Morgan Edge drops the family bomb. His real name is Tal-Rho. He and Superman share the same mother, Lara, who apparently had an arranged marriage with a guy named Zeta-Rho before meeting Jor-El and changing Krypton's destiny. When the planet exploded, Tal-Rho was also sent to Earth, except his ship landed in the English countryside. And like any good villain with a British accent, he has a megalomaniacal plan. Use a machine called the Eradicator to resurrect Krypton using human bodies as hosts. Clark obviously turns down the offer of family global domination and flies straight to the Fortress of Solitude. Jor-El's hologram confirms the whole story, but warns he has no idea how to reverse the Eradicator's process, since it was Lara's own invention. Meanwhile, at the farm, farm, Jonathan is biting his nails. He saw the footage of the evil Superman from another dimension and is terrified his dad might decide to join his new uncle. Lois, being the rock of the family, guarantees Clark would never do that. The problem is that Kyle Cushing has already been taken over by a Kryptonian mind and gives Lois and Lana a massive scare before being neutralized by the army. Needing immediate answers, Clark realizes the only person who knows how to shut down the Eradicator is its creator. Lana Lang, proving she has more courage than many heroes out there, volunteers to temporarily host Lara's consciousness. It works.
Hannah.
Clark finally gets the chance to talk to his mother and tell her about his life. Lara explains that possession takes weeks to become permanent and teaches him how to break the connection. It's exactly at that moment Edge decides to activate dozens of Kryptonians hidden throughout Smallville. Wasting no time, Superman grabs the Eradicator, flies high into the sky, and using his own body as a battery, unleashes a massive solar flare. The shockwave fries the machine's connection, instantly freeing everyone, including Kyle. The crisis passes, but the Man of Steel collapses unconscious in the Fortress of Solitude, while Edge swears the war isn't over yet. While Superman tries to recover from his blackout at the Fortress of Solitude, we are thrown into the past. We see a teenage Clark Kent trekking through the snow to create his iconic base, training exhaustively with Jor-El's hologram, and finally putting on the classic suit made by Martha. The guy arrives in Metropolis already stopping a green car in midair and saving a kid, delivering that nostalgic moment any comic book fan recognizes from a mile away. At the Daily Planet, the chemistry between him and Lois Lane is instantaneous. They start investigating an extremist named Henry Miller. Lois, unafraid of danger, goes head-to-head with the criminal, and that's when Clark makes his big rescue and officially earns the name Superman. The romance takes off, complete with Clark using his super hearing to listen to Lois confess she's in love with him. Marriage, the news that they're having twins, everything is perfect, a little too perfect. Suddenly, the illusion crumbles. Jor-El screams for Clark to run, and reality knocks on the door. Morgan Edge is invading his mind using Kryptonian tech. The villain took advantage of the Man of Steel still being drained to break into the base, beat him up, and find out everything about Lois, Jordan, and Jonathan. Knowing exactly where to hit to make it hurt, Edge flies straight to the Kent farm. Jordan even tries to use his heat vision to protect his family but is tossed aside like a rag doll. Before the worst can happen, Superman lands. Except he can barely stand. To save his wife and kids, Clark does the only thing left. He drops to his knees and swears absolute loyalty to his brother. Edge drags Clark to his own desert fortress and introduces him to the hologram of Zeta-Ro, his dictator father. Mercilessly, Clark is struck by a torturous beam of energy from the Eradicator, designed to corrupt his mind and turn him into a weapon. At the farm, Lois makes a desperate decision. Following Clark's last request before leaving, she picks up the phone and calls the only person capable of stopping an evil Superman, John Henry Irons. Anguish grips the Kent farm. With Superman in Edge's hands, the family feels completely helpless, until Jordan decides to push his super hearing to the absolute limit to try and track his dad, and he succeeds. In the middle of the desert, Clark is fighting tooth and nail against the Eradicator, who is trying to force General Zod's mind into his head. In a brief moment of lucidity, Clark screams for help, and Jordan intercepts the message before Edge drags him back into the machine. With the location in hand, John Henry Irons takes control of the situation. He and General Lane plan to use a red solar energy missile to obliterate the Man of Steel once and for all. Even John Diggle shows up to deliver Argus tech, though he is clearly uncomfortable knowing the target is the hero of Metropolis. Lois tries everything to prove that Clark can still be saved, reminding them that Kyle Cushing managed to resist the possession. In an act of total desperation, she plays her last card. She reveals to Irons that Superman is Clark Kent, her husband, and the father of her children. Jonathan also steps up, appealing to the guy's paternal side, but Irons isn't easily swayed and takes off in his suit, ready for the kill. The brawl between Irons and the Zod-controlled Superman is brutal, and even reaches Earth's orbit. Irons manages to knock the Kryptonian down with an epic hammer strike and arms the missile. Clark, fighting Zod from the inside, begs to be killed to end the suffering. but Lois and Jonathan's words finally echo in Irons' head. He lowers the weapon and yells at Clark to fight back. Focusing on the memories of his family, Superman forces Zod's consciousness out by sheer willpower. With the hero back in control, the dynamic duo turns their attention to Edge. The villain tries to flee into space with the Eradicator, but Irons fires the missile. In an attempt to protect the machine with his heat vision, Edge ends up causing the device's destruction and falls back to Earth, defeated. Clark finally returns home, but peace has an expiration date. Locked in a kryptonite cell at the Department of Defense, Edge smiles. He has absorbed the power of the Eradicator. The tables have turned once again.
Complete what you were sent here for.
Edge is locked up in a kryptonite-powered cell at the Department of Defense, but his mind is elsewhere. He is hearing voices from his father and a bunch of other Kryptonians, undergoing some kind of bizarre mutation. When Clark tries to get answers out of him, Edge resorts to psychological terror. He claims that being controlled by Zod was liberating because he finally didn't have to hold back, and the worst part is, that gets inside Clark's head. At the Kent farm, life tries to get back on track, but normal is a strong word. Lois returns to the Gazette, but her boss, Chrissy, demands the cold, hard truth about the military operations. Since Lois can't exactly print her husband's secrets, she's asked to leave. Welcome to small-town journalism. Meanwhile, John Henry Irons is living in the Kent's barn, going full Tony Stark in the garage as he fine-tunes his armor. He and Superman soon have to spring into action when Leslie Lar decides to pay an explosive visit to the DoD to break her boss out. The dynamic duo intercepts the Kryptonian midair and locks her up right next to Edge. With all the villains caged, General Lane decides it's time to destroy the kryptonite weapons. Surprisingly, Clark is the only one against it. He knows that if he's ever corrupted again, humanity will need a backup plan that actually works. The teenagers are also having a rough day. Sarah is being heavily judged at school because her family unknowingly helped the season's villain. She and Jordan skip school, go to a lake, share their first kiss, and are promptly arrested for trespassing. Jonathan also catches a bad break. His crush only wants to hang out with him to dig up gossip about the military. Lois and Lana rescue their kids from the police station, and Lois and Clark finally reach an agreement about the Green Arsenal. The weapons won't stay with the government. They'll be given to someone who wouldn't hesitate to pull the trigger if necessary. Irons accepts the mission. Everything seemed under control until Edge finally stops fighting the voices. He surrenders to the Eradicator, gets an absurd power upgrade, and escapes the prison by tearing through the roof. He flies straight into space and parks right next to the sun, absorbing its energy. Morgan Edge is history. Now the problem is infinitely worse. 3 weeks pass and Smallville has become a literal military zone. The Department of Defense has set up camp in the town square waiting for Edge's return, and the locals are at their wits' end. General Lane tries to contain the outrage at a town hall meeting, but the red alert goes off before he completely loses the crowd. Edge has returned to Earth and just broke Leslie Lar out. The duo doesn't attack the countryside. They fly straight to Metropolis and just hover there, right above the crowd. When Superman and Irons arrive for the showdown, the real nightmare begins. Ordinary people on the street simply start to levitate. Edge doesn't need a machine anymore. He is the living Eradicator, and he turns civilians into Kryptonians just by being near them. The city turns into a war zone, with heat vision slicing buildings in half. As Superman and Irons trade punches with the makeshift army, Lois climbs onto a rooftop to broadcast the truth live. Leslie Lar sneaks up behind her, ready to fry the reporter, an exact recreation of how Irons' wife died in his dimension. But this time, he gets a second chance. He throws his hammer and knocks the villain out before the worst can happen. Back in Smallville, the crisis is much more mundane. Kyle got a job in another town, forcing the Cushings to put their house up for sale. Devastated, Sarah heads to a bonfire party in the woods to find Jordan. The joyride ends when General Lane appears out of nowhere after seeing the attack on TV and shoves his grandkids into the car. But on the dark road, their getaway ends in a violent crash. Edge is standing in the middle of the road, unfazed.
Oh my!
Watch out!
Jonathan tries to shoot him with kryptonite, but the bullets don't even leave a scratch. The villain tears open the car frame, grabs Jordan, and takes flight. Superman frantically searches for his son through space, but Edge never even left Earth. In an isolated power plant, he unleashes his full power on Jordan, injecting a very specific consciousness into the boy. When the kid's eyes open, the mind inside belongs to Zeta Ro, Edge's ruthless father. The villain has set the perfect board. If the Man of Steel wants to save the world, he's going to have to beat his own son to a pulp. Zeta Rho in control of Jordan's body is a walking nightmare. He orders Edge to resurrect the Kryptonian Defense Council and flies to a volcano with a single goal: to lure Superman into a trap. While Jonathan, Lana, and Kyle pull General Lane from the car wreckage, the military base in Smallville deals with furious civilian protests. The chaos is only silenced when Edge appears in the sky, raises a massive energy barrier, and eradicates Lane's elite squad in the blink of an eye. Far away from there, Clark finds his son. For a brief second, Jordan regains control in a heartbreaking reunion, but Zeta Rho quickly suffocates the boy's mind and charges at the hero. Knowing that a full-strength punch could kill the kid, Superman just takes the beating, serving as a punching bag until the villain disappears. Back in Smallville, the family comes up with a do-or-die plan. Superman will face the council head-on, Irons will fry Edge using solar weaponry, and Lois will handle the riskiest part, using alien memory tech to enter Jordan's mind and rescue the boy from the inside. Irons supercharges his hammer and descends into the kryptonite mines with Superman. During the insane brawl against the elite soldiers, Jordan is knocked out. Irons doesn't waste a second, grabs the kid, and tosses him straight into Lois's arms. She dives into her son's subconscious and, running purely on maternal stubbornness, banishes Zeta Rho's consciousness for good. But the final boss is still standing. Edge pumps himself full of X-kryptonite and creates an energy field so volatile that all of Smallville starts to catch fire. Superman flies into the heart of the chaos and pins the villain down through brute force. With his armor's battery dead, Irons flies up into Earth's orbit and hurls his flaming hammer down like a meteor. The strike shatters the barrier and knocks the Eradicator out once and for all. Irons free falls from space, out of power and bracing for impact, but is saved by Clark at the very last second. As the dust settles, the town breathes a sigh of relief and throws a classic victory barbecue. Kyle becomes a local hero, gets his old job back, and cancels the move, ensuring peace between Jordan and Sarah. Lois becomes partners with Chrissy at the Gazette, and Lane takes a leave of absence from the military to focus on what matters. Everything seems resolved, until Irons packs his bags to leave, and a ship breaches the atmosphere, crashing right into the Kent's backyard. The person stepping out of the wreckage is Nat, his daughter who somehow crossed the multiverse. The reunion is all tears and hugs until the girl looks over and freezes. Lois Lane is standing right there, alive and identical to the mother she lost. The calm in this family's life definitely never lasts. 3 months have passed since the dust settled in Smallville, but peace in the Kent household was a short-lived luxury. Lois has been avoiding Natalie, John Henry Irons' daughter, who arrived from another dimension. It's understandable, seeing as looking at the girl is a living reminder of the daughter Lois herself lost in the past, but avoiding the problem doesn't make it go away, and the tension in the air is palpable. Meanwhile, Jordan goes full romantic, setting up a reunion with Sarah, who just got back from summer camp. He takes her to a candlelit bridge, but she quickly kills the mood and leaves. On the other side of the world, Superman saves a North Korean submarine but is hit by a paralyzing headache that overloads his senses. To make matters worse, his new military liaison, Lieutenant Anderson, gives him a lecture. The guy thinks Superman should be a weapon exclusive to the United States, as if he were Captain America rather than a global hero. An earthquake suddenly hits Smallville. Superman rushes to the local mines to save the workers and runs into 2 guys wearing suits similar to his. The military has created its own knockoff super soldiers, and Anderson makes no secret of his intention to replace Clark. Elsewhere, Lois finally works up the courage. She sits down to talk to Natalie, apologizes for giving her the cold shoulder for months, and invites the girl and John to live at the Kent farm. It's a beautiful family moment, but it won't last. Deep underground, in the darkest depths of the mine, a gigantic fist smashes through the rock of a subterranean tomb. Whatever it is, it's awake. Living with the Irons family on the farm requires some adjusting, but Clark's real problem continues to be these headaches that leave him completely out of commission. He and Lois think it might be some bizarre after effect of Zod's spirit. Desperate for answers, Clark goes to the DoD prison to talk to his half-brother, Tal Rho. Tal swears he has nothing to do with it, and even offers his own fortress of solitude to investigate, but Clark doesn't trust him for a second, and it becomes clear he should have accepted the help right away. While trying to stop a terrorist attack at an airport, Superman has another mental blackout and gets knocked out cold. The ones who save the day are Lieutenant Anderson's new manufactured Supermen. Lois has her own set of problems. Her journalistic credibility is being questioned questioned over an old article about a cult. She and Chrissy try to investigate the mines where the earthquake happened, but they hit a dead end. Elsewhere in town, the mayoral candidate drops out and Lana Cushing decides to enter the race. Jordan, handling Sarah's cold shoulder terribly, goes with Clark and Tal to the fortress. There, the hologram of their mother, Lara L., scolds both her sons. In the middle of the holographic family reunion, the underground monster causes another tremor. Tal uses the distraction to reveal he still has powers and tries to attack, but Clark and Jordan quickly put the villain back in his place. In Smallville, the truth starts to come out. Sarah confesses to Jordan that she kissed someone else at camp. Lois also makes a confession to Chrissy. The secret source for her controversial article was her own sister Lucy, who almost died in the cult. And in the shadows of the mining company, the head of the operation celebrates just how powerful the underground monster is turning out to be. Clark's constant headaches are messing not only with his body but with his emotional control. When Jordan mentions he wants to reveal his powers to try and save his relationship with Sarah, Clark explodes. The reaction is so disproportionate that it shocks everyone, and Clark himself realizes his mind is clouded in a dangerous way. Jordan backs off, and his relationship with Sarah continues to crumble. At school, Jonathan discovers that his girlfriend, Candace, is selling performance-enhancing drugs to the football team. Instead of doing what any sensible person would do, he asks her for the drugs, wanting to reclaim his spot on the field, a classic terrible teenage decision. Meanwhile, Sam Lane manages to sneak John Henry into the mines. The former general also tries to help Lois with the Ally Alston cult problem, convincing Lucy to meet with her sister to verify the story in the article and clear Lois's name. But the biggest problem of the day isn't family related. The underground monster finally breaches the surface. Superman flies in to fight, but takes the beating of a lifetime. The beast is absurdly strong and relentless. John Henry suits up as Steel and joins the fray, managing to break off a piece of the enemy's helmet before being taken down with a single punch. When the dust settles, Superman looks at the monster's exposed face. It's a pale, heavily scarred version of himself, speaking a strange language before taking off and vanishing. The night ends badly for everyone. Lois goes to meet her sister, but the person who shows up instead is the cult leader, Allie. And up in the Arctic, the bizarro Superman arrives at Clark's old fortress of solitude and, staring into the void, utters just one word: Mother. Lois Lane has a ghost from her past knocking at her door, and her name is Allie Alston. The charismatic cult leader, giving off that unmistakable Hollywood cult energy, managed to pull Lucy, Lois's sister, into her inverse society a few years ago. Now Allie wants to destroy the reporter's journalistic credibility and puts Lucy on a podcast to deny every bad thing she ever said about the cult. Guaranteed family drama. While Lois deals with microphone issues, Clark has much heavier headaches to worry about. In the Arctic, Bizarro uses fire breath on his own pendant, and Clark feels the impact due to their telepathic link. It doesn't take long for the villain to show up at the Kent farm to settle things with his fists. Things are about to get ugly, but John Henry Irons swoops in with his hammer to save the day. The catch is, Irons gives him a warning. Clark needs to swallow his pride and ask General Anderson and his super soldiers for help. Even against his will, Superman hands the data over to Anderson. The general sends his team to Bolivia after Bizarro, but the outcome is exactly what you'd expect from uniformed red shirts. They are massacred in seconds. Superman and Irons arrive in time to make Bizarro retreat, but Irons' armor fails, and he ends up severely injured. Far from there, the teens do what they do best: make bad decisions. Jordan decides to play vigilante by stopping a robbery and gets caught on security cameras. He panics and calls his grandfather, Sam Lane, who deletes the footage and, surprisingly, agrees to train the kid. Jonathan, on the other hand, is crushing it in football, but the secret to his success isn't sweat, it's the alien steroids he bought from his girlfriend. To top it off, Lois's partner Chrissy tries to infiltrate the cult, but Allie was already one step ahead. She shows her a secretly doctored video to make the journalist doubt Lois's integrity. It turns out, Allie's obsession isn't anything new. Back in 1979, she inherited that weird pendant and the mission to change the world. The tactic still works. Chrissy, wavering in her trust of Lois, goes to meet the cult leader and ends up getting drugged. Allie places the pendant on her, and Chrissy has visions of an inverse world where Allie basically rules everything. A full-blown dystopian nightmare. Good thing Superman and Lois show up to interrupt the ceremony. They arrive just as Bizarro decides to attack the cult. The Man of Steel manages to subdue his bizarre counterpart in a brutal fistfight, while General Anderson, still mourning the loss of his soldiers, washes his hands of the situation and refuses to help with the hunt. Away from the alien smackdown, Sarah's quinceañera was supposed to be a peaceful moment, but the vibe crashes fast. She finds out that her dad, Kyle, had an affair with a bartender and drops the bombshell right in Lana's lap in the middle of the celebration. Back at the Kent farm, the boys continue their own soap opera. Jealous of the training Jordan is getting from their grandfather, Jonathan takes another hit of his drugs and beats his brother up during sparring.
Hey, that's enough. That's enough.
What is wrong with you?
You're done here.
Jordan, thinking his brother has finally developed natural abilities, agrees to keep it a secret, having no idea John is basically using Kryptonian steroids. With the dust settling, Superman heads to the Fortress of Solitude to interrogate Bizarro. The prisoner, now speaking much more clearly, issues a grim warning straight out of a horror movie script. If Superman doesn't kill Allie Alston, his entire family is going to pay the price. Bizarro's answers finally come to light. At the fortress, he explains how things work in his home world, and he isn't exactly the hero of the story. He explains that he fought a superpowered version of Lana Lang, stole Allie Alston's pendant from there, and fled to our Earth. The goal? Destroy the artifact here before both allies merge and become an unstoppable entity. A classic multiverse crisis that must be prevented at all costs. Meanwhile, Lana's marriage bombshell explodes once and for all. Clark tries to comfort his friend, which gives Lana the courage to seek out Kyle's ex-mistress. When she pieces together the timeline of the affair, the decision is swift. She tells her husband to pack his bags and leave. No tears, no regrets. The gathering at the Kent farm doesn't go much better. Sam Lane forces Lois and Lucy to make up. But the second Allie's name is brought up, the war reignites. At school, the inevitable happens. Jordan finally connects the dots and realizes Jonathan's sudden powers are pure chemistry. The two nearly come to blows in the locker room after the football game, only stopping because their grandfather shows up to cool things down. But the real disaster is unfolding behind closed military doors. General Anderson is getting an epic chewing out from his superiors for losing control. Desperate, he demands Superman hand over the pendant, but the Man of Steel refuses. So Anderson plays dirty. He lures Superman into a trap, floods the room with red sun radiation, and arrests him for treason. General Anderson has completely lost his mind. Frustrated by Superman's lack of cooperation, he decides the best strategy is to lock the Man of Steel in a military cell alongside his psychopathic brother, Tal-Rho. The goal is simple: extract Bizarro's location by force, even if it means torturing Tal-Rho right in front of Clark. Superman tries to buy time by sending the military to the wrong Fortress of Solitude. When Anderson figures out the trick, the brothers stage a fight, smash the red sunlights in the cell, and escape. Meanwhile, the teenage drama runs wild. Jonathan takes the fall for his girlfriend's drugs and is one step away from being expelled. But Jordan spills the beans to Lois. His brother isn't Smallville's Heisenberg. He's just using X-Kryptonite, not dealing it. When Clark gets home, he gives the kid the biggest scolding of his life. Lana, on the other hand, gets her moment of glory. Her political opponent tries to use Kyle's infidelity to humiliate her, but she flips the script and destroys him publicly with absolute class. Knowing his military career is over, Anderson throws the rulebook out the window. He inhales X-Kryptonite, grabs kryptonite ammo, and goes hunting Kryptonians. The guy is so far gone that, exploiting Bizarro's weakness against himself, he manages to kill the doppelganger from the other dimension. Superman has to fly his brother up to the sun just to save his life. Cornered and hunted by the government, Anderson does the unthinkable. He seeks out cult leader Allie Alston and hands the mystical pendant over to her. Two villains with a single goal. With Bizarro dead, Anderson has become America's #1 fugitive. Even worse, he now has a direct line to the bizarre version of Allie Alston, who demands an interdimensional meeting with the ally of this world. At the farm, the atmosphere is heavy. John Henry Irons survived, but he is dealing with severe brain trauma. His daughter Nat can barely look at Clark. Not only does he have the face of the man who destroyed her world, but it was under his watch that her father nearly died. Feeling the guilt weighing on him, Clark sets them up in a new house with a workshop, giving them the space they need. Far from there, Jonathan tries to pay off his debts by working at a convenience store, but he is cornered by an inhaler dealer. Jordan shows up at the last second to save his brother and his girlfriend, but playing hero comes at a cost. He misses an important date with Sarah. At the Schuster mines, the madness reaches another level. Allie tries to open a portal to the inverse world, but the crossing is basically a meat grinder. Followers who try to enter simply disintegrate. Superman arrives in time to stop Allie and journalist Chrissy from jumping to a certain death, but Anderson, supercharged and desperate, dives into the portal and disappears. The real stab in the back, however, comes from where they least expect it. Lucy Lane shows up at the farm, claiming she finally saw the truth and left the cult. The vibe of family redemption is beautiful, right up until Sam takes his daughter home. She simply drugs her own father's tea, steals his Pentagon access codes, and goes off to free Allie. Her blood might be Lane, but Lucy's loyalty lies 100% with the cult. Wasting no time after being released by Lucy, Allie dives straight into the interdimensional portal, and Superman, in a pure leap of faith, goes right after her. The catch is, he crosses over without any protective suit. Weeks go by, and the world remains without its greatest protector. Steel steps up to the front lines against global threats, which only fuels Nat's frustration as she watches her dad ignore her to play full-time hero. With the Man of Steel out of the picture, Sam Lane decides it's time for boot camp, secretly honing Jordan's powers, and the results show up fast. When a massive fire destroys an ex-kryptonite warehouse in Smallville, Jordan and Steel jump into action and save Kyle from the flames. Lana's campaign finally wraps up, and she wins the mayoral election. Smallville has a new sheriff in town. However, the fire rescue exposes Jordan's heroic moonlight gig to Lois, who is furious at her father for training the kid behind her back. Still, they use intel from Jonathan's girlfriend to take down the ex-kryptonite cartel once and for all. Lois and Sam investigate the site, but end up held hostage by a goon pumped full of alien steroids. With Superman unavailable, Sam calls in his grandson. Jordan storms the warehouse, takes down the brute solo, and saves his family. But a double life takes its toll. Just ask Peter Parker. Jordan arrives too late to celebrate the election win with Sarah. Tired of the secrets and constant disappearing acts, she breaks up with him. Lois is comforting her heartbroken son at the farm when Jonathan is hit by a brutal migraine, exactly like his dad's. Right then, a figure appears in the backyard. It's Bizarro Jonathan, and he brings a chilling warning. Superman was too late. Superman crosses the portal and discovers that Bizarro World takes its name very seriously. The sun is red, the planet is cube-shaped, and to make matters worse, he drops straight into a cave lined with kryptonite. After finding what looks like General Anderson's body and receiving a tense warning from his mother's hologram, Clark seeks refuge at the local Kent farm. There, he bumps into Bizarro Jonathan and learns that this Earth's family dynamic went down the drain a long time ago. This Jonathan got powers while Clark was busy dealing with fans at public events. The kid became a celebrity, resented his father's absence, and ended up being the perfect puppet for Allie Alston's cult. Meanwhile, the original Bizarro lost himself to kryptonite addiction and fame, prompting Lois to pack her bags and vanish with Jordan. Basically, reality show drama, but with superpowers and global destruction on the line. The situation heats up when the real General Anderson finally arrives in this world. He tries to ally himself with his doppelganger, but under Allie's orders, Bizarro John turns the local Anderson into toast. Forced to retreat, the original General teams up with Bizarro Lois, and shortly after saves the Man of Steel and the journalist from her own inverted son. The big showdown takes place at the farm. Both allies show up thirsty for the dimensional pendants. In a fit of rage, Bizarro John murders General Anderson, but the guilt hits him instantly. In an act of desperation, the kid flees through the portal to the normal world. With some unexpected help from Bizarro Tal-Ro, who seems remorseful about his own planet's downfall, Superman manages to go after him. On the other side, Lois and her sons come face to face with the dark version of Jonathan, who announces exactly what he came to do: merge with his original self. Bizarro Jonathan wastes no time in the real world and tries to force the merge, but Superman shows up just in time to crash the party and send the kid packing. The relief is short-lived as our Earth's John starts suffering from the same crippling headaches that affected Clark near the dimensional anomalies.
What'd you see?
Using his son's visions, Clark tracks the villain down to Smallville, but the chase is cut short by a completely confused Lana Lang, shocked to see he's been missing for weeks. At home, the vibe is still awful. Clark finds out that the person dealing X-Kryptonite at school, which got Jonathan expelled, was his girlfriend Candace. But the teen drama is put on hold. The next morning, Lana decides to gift Sarah a car. The test drive, however, is brutally interrupted by Bizarro John, who attacks, kidnaps Lana, and uses the mystical pendant to summon her superpowered counterpart from the other world. While Lois tries to piece things together after talking to Sarah, which upsets Jordan because of course there's room for teen jealousy in the middle of chaos, Superman locates the hideout, but he flies right into a trap. Evil John stabs the Man of Steel with shards of kryptonite right in front of a terrified Lana. At the same time, Bizarro Lana emerges in the mines and faces off against John and Natalie. It's a brutal fight, but Natalie saves the day, taking the villain down and forcing her to flee back through the portal. Back at the hideout, the real Lana pulls the green rocks out of Clark's body, getting him back in the fight. He has to hurry, as Bizarro John returns to the farm to finish the job. There, he clashes with Jordan, who, in the heat of battle, finally learns how to fly. Superman arrives to secure the win, handing his inverted nephew over to military custody. After this utter trauma, Clark makes the decision he's been putting off for years. He looks Lana in the eyes and reveals he is Superman. Finding out your childhood best friend is the guy who saves the planet every Tuesday isn't the kind of news you process quickly, and Lana is absolutely stunned. To make matters worse, she takes her frustration out on Lois, feeling that their friendship was built on a massive lie. Meanwhile, Jonathan's expulsion is revoked, and he heads back to school, but the tension with his old football teammates is as thick as it gets. At the military prison, Superman forces a confession out of Bizarro John. Allie Alston is going to invade their universe to expand her rule. Sam Lane and John Henry decide the most practical solution is to destroy the portal and lock both dimensions away forever. Clark refuses to take such an extreme measure and makes a highly questionable call, releasing his psychopathic brother Tal-Rho to help brainstorm a plan. Predictably, Sam and John hate the idea. The breather ends when Allie finally shows up. She has successfully merged with her Bizarro self, and the power upgrade is insane. With the confidence of a deity, she wrecks Tal-Rho in seconds, steals the portal pendant, and takes on Superman and Steel. It's a heavy beatdown, but Clark manages to snatch the artifact back. While Steel holds the line against the cult leader, Superman and Tal-Rho fly to a nearby volcano and melt the pendant, Lord of the Rings style. Frustrated and without the key to the dimensions, Allie flies away. Taking advantage of the distraction, Tal-Rho realizes he's free from his inhibitor cuffs and vanishes. Later, Clark and Lois try to clear the air with Lana. She assures them Clark's secret will go to her grave but asks for space until she can process everything. In the inverted world, the game is far from over. Allie drains the life and powers out of that reality's Tal-Rho until he's dead. Stronger than ever, and accompanied by the corrupted version of Lana, she plans to use her backup plan to bring both universes to their knees. With the mystical pendant destroyed, Allie Alston decides it's time to fast-track her plan and force the two universes to merge. Lois and her dad, Sam, head to an inverse method facility, playing a final card to break Lucy out of the cult's brainwashing. But the followers' fanaticism is on a whole other level of devotion. Adding to the family drama, Lana decides to completely cut ties with the Kents, at least for now. Jordan even tries to use the situation to see Sarah, but gets a hard, non-negotiable rejection from the mayor. Elsewhere in town, John Henry finds out his daughter, Natalie, wasn't just playing mechanic. She built her own steel suit. He's furious, but the scolding has to wait. Allie makes a surprise appearance at the cult's base, wreaking havoc and demanding Lois summon Superman so she can steal more energy. When Lois refuses, she attacks Sam. Lucy, horrified at seeing the leader's true colors, ends up calling the Man of Steel, and what follows is a massacre. Allie doesn't just go toe-to-toe with Superman, she siphons his life force like a parasite, leaving the hero on the brink of death. Cue Natalie's triumphant entrance, officially debuting her armor, which saves the day. She helps her dad fend off the villain and uses the suit's energy as a high-powered defibrillator to restart Clark's heart. He survives, but the diagnosis at the military hospital is brutal. His powers are gone. While Chrissy starts putting the pieces together and deducing Clark's big secret, the global scenario falls apart. Bizarro Lana Lana reunites with Allie, and the cult leader uses the newly stolen energy to hit play on the collision of the two worlds. With no one strong enough left to stop her, powerless and physically drained, Clark returns to the farm, aware that his body can no longer absorb solar energy. Trying to grasp the severity of the problem, he asks Steele to take him to the desert fortress to consult Lara L's hologram. Meanwhile, a sign of the apocalypse appears in the sky. The red cubic sun of Bizarro World looms on the horizon, scrambling Earth's entire power grid. Bizarro Lana tries to break into the Kent farm looking for Superman, but gets brushed back by Steele. As a consolation prize, she breaks Bizarro Jonathan out of custody. Knowing Allie is hiding in the void between universes orchestrating the merge, John Henry locks Natalie's suit for her own safety and heads into extra-dimensional space alone. He unloads his arsenal on Allie, but the weapons barely leave a scratch. The villain easily defeats him, leaving him stranded and adrift. In town, panic sets in. At a town hall meeting, Lana reveals the truth about the merging worlds and Superman's fall, which nearly incites a riot right out of a disaster movie. To calm the crowd, Clark shows up in his suit. He uses sheer presence and smooth talking to hold things together, since his muscles are of no use anymore. Amidst the chaos, Jordan tries to pull Sarah aside for a private chat, but the timing is awful. The two are suddenly attacked by Bizarro Lana. Jordan manages to hold her off just long enough for Natalie to hack her dad's lockdown, suit up, and fly in to help incapacitate the evil doppelganger. Sarah, having just watched her ex-boyfriend shoot heat vision, is furious about being lied to throughout their entire relationship. But the argument will have to wait. Elements from both worlds begin bleeding together in the streets, a clear sign that Earth's time is up. The situation calls for unlikely allies, and Tal-Ro shows up at the farm offering to help fight their mutual threat. Before a plan can be mapped out, Lois is suddenly sucked into the inverted world, where she finds Sam and decides to look for anyone on that side who can help stop Allie. Tal-Ro decides to play the lone hero and goes after the villain to try and stop the merge by himself. Obviously, it backfires. Allie easily overpowers him and begins draining his abilities. If it weren't for an emergency rescue by Jordan, the Uncle of the Year would have turned to dust right then and there. In the void between universes, Natalie modifies her suit and manages to rescue her dad. The two Steels make a heavy decision. They are going to focus all their suit's energy into destroying the portal. It's a kamikaze move that will likely cost them their lives, but it's Earth's only shot. Desperate, Clark pulls the most insane plan imaginable out of his sleeve. He convinces Tal-Ro to fly him out of the atmosphere and hurl him straight into the sun. The goal is to force his Kryptonian cells to reboot with a massive shock of pure energy. The suicidal gamble pays off. Clark not only regains his strength, but comes back completely supercharged. He arrives in space just in time to save the Steels and stop the collapse of the worlds. When Allie tries her energy-draining trick, Superman is so overloaded that the villain short-circuits and is split back into two normal people, ending the threat. With the world saved, Smallville establishes a new holiday, Miracle Monday, to honor the Man of Steel. Embracing a fresh start, Clark and Lana make up. Lois finally confirms to Chrissy that she's married to the hero, and Jordan and Sarah decide to give their relationship another try, this time with no secrets. Tal-Ro gifts his nephews 2 trucks and moves to Bizarro World seeking a new life. And while John Henry gets a visit from John Diggle, bringing a warning about a very dangerous man named Bruno Mannheim, Clark builds a new fortress of solitude in the middle of the ocean, a haven designed to keep the entire family united, ready for whatever the universe throws their way. The new fortress of solitude in the middle of the ocean is up and running, and life seems to be back on track. Lana is the mayor, Sam Lane has shut down the ex-kryptonite mines for good, and Lois is focused on investigating Bruno Mannheim, the kingpin of the inner-gang crime syndicate. Things are looking so promising that Lois thinks she's pregnant and shares the news with Clark and Lana. Meanwhile, the twins are still a handful. Jordan botches one of Superman's rescues in Asia, gets an epic earful from his dad, and still has to deal with Sarah telling him they're just friends, even after he revealed his biggest secret: welcome to puberty with superpowers. In the middle of the boys' birthday barbecue at the Kent farm, duty calls. Superman flies to Metropolis to face a juiced-up version of Atom Man. Just as the villain gains the upper hand, he is suddenly shot by a hidden sniper. Before Clark can investigate the bizarre execution, Onomatopoeia, a new masked rogue with sound illusion powers, distracts him with fake cries for help and steals Atom Man's body. To make the day even worse, Lois's visit to the doctor brings a harsh reality. reality check. She isn't pregnant, but the test shows severe and unexplained symptoms. And back at Bruno Mannheim's hideout, mad science runs wild as he and Onomatopoeia somehow manage to revive Atom Man. The hallways at Smallville High are blocked off due to black mold, meaning a week off for the teens. Jonathan and Jordan take the chance to crash a party in Metropolis hosted by John's ex. Classic teen drama ensues. Natalie and Sarah show up, things get awkward, and Jordan ends up using his Superboy powers to freeze a couple of bullies' cars outside, because having powers and not being petty with them is almost impossible at that age.
You froze his car?
That's awesome.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
While the kids party, former Mayor George Dean calls to warn Lana about a threat, but he's murdered by Onomatopoeia mid-sentence. Lana and John Henry go after the clues hidden in his office, but run right into the villain. The bizarre part is that Onomatopoeia backs off the second they see John Henry's face, recognizing someone they had already killed before. Perks of the multiverse. But the real emotional weight of the story hits when Lois and Clark track down the judge who released Atom Man. The woman is so terrified of Bruno Mannheim's threats that she attempts to jump off a building. This is where the narrative shifts completely. To talk the judge off the ledge, Lois strips away her own privacy and confesses her secret. She has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. Superman, with his super hearing, listens from afar. That night, the twins were expecting the mother of all scoldings for coming home late from the party, but instead, they find a united family, ready to face their toughest fight, yet head-on. The diagnosis is stage 3 breast cancer, and the hologram of Clark's biological mother gives it to them straight. All the Kryptonian technology in the fortress can't fix this. But Lois Lane reacts the only way she knows how, by ignoring bed rest and diving headfirst into work. Basically, she bails on her first chemo session to go after Intergang with Chrissy. Clark tries to keep everything under control. He even takes her to the rescheduled session. But a mudslide in Nepal demands Superman's presence midway through the process. Alone and terrified of the side effects, Lois bolts from the clinic again to snoop around a suspicious medical warehouse. Obviously, it's a terrible idea. She and Chrissy get cornered by the crime syndicate, and Superman and Steel have to crash through the roof to save them at the very last second. The stress is also fraying everyone else's nerves in town. Lana is at her breaking point with the pressure of being mayor and all the secrets piling up. During a heated argument with Sarah, she loses her temper and slaps her daughter in the face. Meanwhile, Jonathan has to get his stolen truck back from his girlfriend's dad, who also took a valuable watch belonging to Natalie. Over at Intergang's secret lab, Sam Lane makes a macabre discovery while analyzing blood samples left behind. Mannheim's goons are using Superman's own blood to revive and upgrade the villains. Ultimately, the shock of nearly dying in the warehouse brings Lois back to reality. She reunites with her family, accepts their unconditional support, and finally decides to begin her treatment. The Intergang situation is spiraling out of control. Bruno Mannheim keeps expanding his crime syndicate, and worst of all, he's using Superman's blood. While the Man of Steel tries to figure out how his DNA became a weapon, Lois fights on two fronts: her first round of chemo and her stubborn drive to keep investigating Mannheim. Clark tries to get her to focus on her health, but trying to stop Lois Lane is a waste of time. John Henry also ends up in Mannheim's crosshairs. He finds out Intergang is using tech created by his doppelganger on this Earth. To make matters worse, Clark and Lois knew the other John was murdered by the villain and kept it from him. Furious, he seeks out his sister on this world to make sure she's safe. Meanwhile, in Smallville, Jonathan decides to play tough guy and confronts his girlfriend's dad, Emmett, for stealing his truck and his mom's watch. The result? The kid takes a punch, and when Lois steps in, Emmett pulls a gun on her. Obviously, when Clark finds out, his Boy Scout persona vanishes. He walks into the local diner and delivers a message in the most intimidating way possible. After that, Emmett skips town, and the Kents end up taking his daughter in at the farm. To prevent further issues, Superman heads to the Department of Defense and destroys their entire secret stockpile of his blood. But things heat up in Metropolis. Mannheim's thugs capture John. The villain lays his cards on the table. He knows John is Steel, and he has strapped Darlene to a bomb across the city. John suits up, races against the clock, and saves his sister at the last second.
2, 1.
He comes back out for blood, ready to kill Mannheim, but the mob boss warns him that if he tries anything, his entire extended family dies. A perfect checkmate. To wrap things up, Sam Lane hands Jordan a super suit to hide his identity, and Mannheim, tired of having Superman and steel breathing down his neck, decides the real problem he needs to solve is Lois Lane. Lois Lane took the saying, "Keep your enemies closer," to heart. She decides to do her chemo sessions at Hobbs Bay Medical Center, a hospital in Metropolis owned by Bruno Mannheim. General Sam Lane nearly has a heart attack at the idea, but Lois uses the treatment as a front to investigate the villain's connections. The problem is, she gets caught snooping by Mannheim himself. Like a proper antagonist who thinks he's the hero of his own story, he delivers a speech about having a rough childhood and being focused on saving lives. He even agrees to let her continue her treatment and release some medical files. But the underlying warning is clear: do not interfere with his business. Meanwhile, Smallville gets a breather with the Valentine's Day dance. Jordan brings Mateo, a kid from Metropolis, to see Natalie. Sam goes into overprotective grandpa mode, but when Natalie runs off nervously after Mateo tries to kiss her, it's Sam who gives his granddaughter a little nudge to give the guy a chance. Jonathan isn't as lucky in love, as Candace breaks the news that she's moving to a town 4 hours away. Lana, on the other hand, gives up on exposing former mayor George Dean's corrupt schemes, choosing to leave the past buried to give the town some peace. But the truce doesn't last long. An inner-gang-enhanced supervillain, Deadline, breaks into a Department of Defense base. Armed with a kryptonite knife, he gives Superman a hell of a time. Clark manages to take him down, but not before Deadline leaks the locations of other secret bases to the Syndicate. Back at the farm, since Lois was too weak for the dance, the Kent family improvises a romantic dance in their living room, a rare moment of tranquility. Except the worst is yet to come. In Intergang's labs, Mannheim's goons recover a massive trophy, Bizarro's body, and they have only one intention: resurrecting the Beast. Watching Superman take on alien gods is one thing, but seeing him deal with his wife's cancer is something else entirely. Clark is breaking. He tries going to a support group, but walks out halfway through because he can't talk about it. The fear of losing Lois makes him try to micromanage everything around him, especially Jordan. While Lois handles chemo like a champ and even befriends another patient named Pia, she allows Jordan to do global rescues on his own. This drives Clark crazy, and he starts obsessively hovering over the kid. Lois has to confront the Man of Steel, making him realize he's just projecting his fear of death onto his son's training. Clark backs down and apologizes. In Metropolis, Bruno Mannheim's loyalty proves non-existent. The villain Deadline develops aggressive cancer from his powers, and Mannheim simply turns his back, leaving the guy to die. Cold and calculating. The drama in Smallville centers on little Sophie, who runs away after feeling forgotten amidst her parents' divorce. Jonathan and Sarah find her at the park, and John does a great job giving her advice on how to handle family separation. During the search, Lana finally discovers Kyle and Chrissy's secret romance, but acts maturely and gives the couple her blessing. As a bonus, Kyle rewards Jonathan by handing him his own Smallville Fire Department uniform. But Intergang doesn't rest. The villain Onomatopoeia mimics Lois's voice to lure Superman into an ambush. Suddenly, Clark is surrounded by snipers with kryptonite lasers and starts losing the fight. That's when Jordan steps in. He tracks his dad, crashes the fight, and takes a kryptonite blast straight to the chest. But to everyone's surprise, the kid recovers almost instantly. His half-human genetics make him way more resistant to kryptonite than Superman. The kid is leveling up. With the villains defeated, Clark gathers the courage to return to the support group and finally open his heart. But the episode drops a bombshell at the end. Onomatopoeia meets with Mannheim, complaining that her powers are fading. She takes off her mask and reveals herself to be Pia, the same woman who befriended Lois at chemo. Mannheim is funding her treatment in exchange for her services as an assassin. The toll of chemotherapy begins to weigh heavily on Lois, and the entire Kent family feels the impact. Desperate for a magic bullet, Jonathan and Jordan head to the Fortress of Solitude to hunt down some Kryptonian tech that might cure their mom, but Clark quickly shoots the idea down. Human biology can't be fixed with Kryptonian crystals. Unable to punch his way out of this problem, Clark puts on his journalist suit and knocks on Bruno Mannheim's door. The excuse is an exclusive interview, but his real intention is to investigate the mogul. Mannheim's backstory is a classic underworld rise-to-power tale. Years ago, he tried to take over a crime-ridden area, set up a meeting with Lex Luthor, and deeply pissed off his own boss. The boss problem was permanently solved by Pia, who used her sonic powers to literally disintegrate the guy. Putting the pieces together, Clark states the obvious. Mannheim didn't buy a hospital and pour millions into oncology research out of the goodness of his heart. He did it because the woman he loves is dying. Cornered, Pia and Mannheim confess to Clark and Lois that they are secretly married to protect Pia from public scrutiny. Back at the farm, things fall apart. Jonathan finds the will and goodbye letters Lois has been hiding. In a mix of fear and anger, he lashes out at Clark, telling him that because he's an alien, he will never truly understand the weight of human mortality. It's a low blow, but a real one. This forces the parents to have the hardest conversation of all with their kids, facing head-on the possibility that Lois might not survive. And as if Smallville didn't have enough drama, Mateo, the kid from Metropolis who's been seeing Natalie, arrives in town. The catch? When he goes to meet her parents, we discover he is the direct heir to a criminal empire, the son of Bruno Mannheim and Pia. The tension between the Kent brothers is hanging by a thread. Kyle just promoted Jonathan at the firehouse, which should be a cause for celebration, until a fire changes everything. Jordan uses his powers to save a victim, drops the person next to his brother, and vanishes, leaving Jonathan to take a massive chewing out from Kyle for disobeying orders. Jordan even tries to downplay his brother's work at the station, which only makes things worse. Lois, Clark, and Chrissy start cross-referencing DoD files with recent investigations. They come to a wild conclusion. The supersonic killer who cleared the path for Mannheim years ago is the villain Onomatopoeia, meaning Pia. The tragic irony of it all is that Lex Luthor is currently locked up for those exact murders. Superman's greatest enemy has spent years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. In Metropolis, Pia insists on meeting her son's new girlfriend. The family sits down for dinner with no idea that the girl is Natalie Irons. Meanwhile, John Henry tracks his daughter to the intergang-linked restaurant and decides to crash the place, easily creating the worst meet-the-parents dinner in history. Mannheim's goons attack, but John calls in his steel armor. The brawl escalates when Pia unleashes a massive sonic attack that nearly crushes John. Superman arrives just in time to prevent a tragedy, but the physical strain is too much for Pia's sick body, and she collapses in the middle of the street. Dropping the villain act, Mannheim lowers his weapons and surrenders to Superman, just to ensure his wife gets medical attention at the government hospital. In the fallout, John forbids Natalie from seeing Mateo, and Kyle begins to suspect that an unregistered superhero intervened in the fire, putting Jordan's secret identity on the line. To top it all off, Mannheim's secret lab reveals its biggest trump card. Bizarro's deformed corpse suddenly opens its eyes, completely healed. With Pia in government custody, John Henry completely loses it. He starts using a sick woman as a bargaining chip, blocking Mannheim's visits until the crime boss returns everything he stole. Clark tries to play peacemaker. After all, he knows exactly what it's like to watch his wife fight cancer, so he attempts a peaceful approach with Mannheim. But John doesn't want peace. He crashes the conversation, raiding Mannheim's penthouse with a heavily armed tactical squad. His obsession is so glaring that General Lane has to pull John off the task force due to pure emotional instability. Meanwhile, the teenagers ignore all orders to stay away from each other, with Jonathan and Sarah covering up a secret date between Natalie and Mateo. John's explosive behavior has immediate consequences. Mannheim gets tired of negotiating, resurrects Atom Man, and deploys him with a single objective: obliterate John Henry's house. The beatdown drags on into downtown Smallville. Superman arrives to intervene, but takes a heavy hit that knocks him away for a few moments. That's the opening John needed. Without hesitation, he swings his kinetic hammer and executes Atom Man in cold blood right in the middle of the street. When Clark returns, his shock is evident. Heroes don't cross that line, and the rift between Superman and Steel deepens. On the other side of town, Mannheim solidifies his empire by taking Mateo down to the underground lab to meet the newly awakened Bizarro. The kid is officially in the family business. Away from the explosions, Lois faces her own silent battle. Gearing up for a double mastectomy, she projects all her fear onto an old red dress Clark gave her. With Lana's help, she manages to talk through the grief of losing parts of her own body. In response, Clark takes her on a peaceful flight through the skies, with Lois wearing the dress. It's a perfect breath of humanity and lightness before the world around them completely crumbles. The Mannheim family is cornered, but far from throwing in the towel. Bruno, proving he's not winning Father of the Year anytime soon, decides to pull his own son, Matteo, into the criminal scheme to try and save his wife. Meanwhile, Lois has finished chemotherapy and comes back swinging. She focuses her investigation on Mannheim and tries to convince Pia to confess to framing Lex Luthor. Pia, on the other hand, gives it to her straight. Lex out of prison is a much bigger threat. Over in Smallville, there's a festive mood with Governor Wexler's visit. Lana and Chrissy are playing hosts, but the peace is short-lived. Kyle Cushing is obsessed with the recent fires and is convinced there's a metahuman in town. His investigative instincts are sharp, he just needs to point them at the right person. The Kent brothers decide to ditch their dad to hit up a clandestine, beer-fueled party. Sarah is also there, hanging out with the former mayor's son, George. When the cops show up to bust the party, the two try to drive off and end up in a brutal car crash. Jordan swoops in at the last second and saves their lives, but the damage is done. Sarah gets a DUI, and George gets a clear look at Jordan's face. George doesn't keep it a secret and tells Kyle everything. When Jordan confesses to his dad that he was seen and that he'd been drinking, Clark does what any parent would do and grounds the kid. At the DOD prison, Mannheim's plan kicks into gear. Matteo pays his mom a visit and sneaks her a serum derived from Bizarro's corpse. Kyle, officially sick of everyone keeping him in the dark, shows up at Clark's door, convinced Jonathan is the town's superpowered secret. Mid-argument, Clark uses his super hearing, realizes Pia is up to something, cuts the chat short, and takes flight right in front of Kyle. Seeing his flannel-wearing neighbor turn into Superman absolutely breaks Kyle's brain, and Clark's instincts were spot on. Pia takes the serum, regains her sonic powers, trashes the DOD facility, and escapes to Metropolis, reuniting the Mafia family for the next round. Juiced up on Bizarro's serum, Pia uses her sonic powers to fake attacks all over Metropolis, keeping Superman running around like a confused guard dog. It's the perfect distraction for the Mannheim family to attempt an escape through an abandoned subway network, all while Lois is prepping for her double mastectomy. Elsewhere, Clark comes clean to Kyle about his secret identity. The firefighter promises to keep it quiet, but is furious to realize his girlfriend Chrissy had been lying to him this whole time. The dynamics in Smallville are tense. Natalie is shaken by Matteo's disappearance, and Jordan and Sarah's friendship takes a heavy hit after the car crash. However, Mannheim's medical miracle had an expiration date. Pia's symptoms return with a vengeance, and the pain causes her powers to spiral out of control. When she accidentally kills one of their henchmen right in front of her son, reality sets in. Knowing the end is near, she flees to spare her husband and son from watching her die. Pia's meltdown triggers citywide blackouts, interrupting Lois's surgery at the worst possible moment. The stress levels spike so high that Jordan has a panic attack, which triggers his X-ray vision for the first time. John Henry and Natalie manage to corner Mannheim in his apartment, but anger gives way to empathy. John steps back to let the mob boss try and save his wife, but it's too late. Pia is already in the streets of Metropolis, causing earthquakes and absolute sonic chaos. When Superman shows up, she gets the message. The two fly high into the atmosphere, and she passes away in the sky, sparing the city from further destruction. After the scare, Lois's surgery finishes successfully. Kyle, seeing his daughter spiral into a destructive path, has a vulnerable conversation with Sarah about his own battle with clinical depression. In the end, Mannheim surrenders and cuts a deal to clear his son's name. The Intergang chapter seems closed, but back in the villain's destroyed lab, Bizarro's body suddenly springs back to life and escapes. Following Mannheim's public confession that he framed Lex Luthor, Lois and Clark have to brace themselves for the villain's inevitable release. As if that wasn't enough, the Daily Planet starts digging into the rumors of a teenage hero in Smallville, even asking Lois for advice on how to cover the story. The fame starts going to Jordan's head. Sarah gets annoyed watching him brag about his Superboy exploits, especially since he came down so hard on her when his secret almost leaked. Seeing their son's irresponsibility, Lois and Clark clip his wings and forbid him from using his powers in public. Over at the firehouse, Jonathan is in an awkward spot. Ever since Kyle found out who Superman is, he's suddenly been treating the kid with special privileges. Clark has to have a straight talk with Kyle to make him treat the boy like a regular probie again. The quiet ends when a massive tornado threatens the town. Jordan, completely ignoring his grounding, grabs his suit from his grandfather and flies out to help his dad dissipate the storm. They save the day, but instead of slipping away, Jordan sticks around posing for pictures with the people they saved. saved. Clark is furious at the kid's need for public validation, leading to a massive blowout. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor gets out of prison. The guy spent years threatening the warden and using the guards themselves to beat down anyone who crossed him on the inside. And if you think he went straight to reclaim LexCorp, think again. Fueled by pure spite, he walks all the way from the prison to the Kent farm just to confront Lois. Lex proves he's been keeping very close tabs. He knows everything, even about her cancer. Without an ounce of empathy, he blames Lois's reporting for destroying his relationship with his daughter and demands she quit journalism forever, completely ignoring her apologies for the wrongful conviction. Threat delivered, Lex leaves with one of his goons and heads straight to Mannheim's abandoned lab. Down in the shadows, they come face to face with Bizarro. Without blinking, Lex watches the creature slaughter his henchmen, already calculating exactly how he's going to turn this monster into his ultimate weapon. It's been over a month since Lex Luthor got out of prison and dropped off the map. While the world's most dangerous villain takes a digital detox, Smallville is trying to enjoy a rare moment of peace. Kyle finds out Chrissy is pregnant and is even planning to propose. John Henry finally asks Lana out, and the Kents are packing their bags for a summer trip to Italy. Everything seems a little too perfect, and, as everyone knows, when things get this quiet on a show, disaster is already waiting around the corner. The red alert flashes when Judge Reagan turns up dead, a clear message to Lois from Lex. At the same time, General Sam Lane is happily dating a woman named Gretchen, except she's on Luthor's payroll and takes the general hostage without breaking a sweat. The old spy disguised as a naive girlfriend trope never fails. So what has Lex been up to all month? Playing mad scientist in Bruno Mannheim's old lab. He and his right-hand man spent weeks killing Bizarro over and over again. Since Bizarro resurrects stronger with every death, Lex essentially forced the creature's evolution until it mutated into an unstoppable killing machine, heavily mirroring the classic monster Doomsday. The goal is simple and brutal. With General Lane out of the picture and unable to trigger security protocols, Lex unleashes the monster on the Kent farm. Superman intercepts the threat, but gets relentlessly beaten in front of a terrified crowd in Smallville. The creature simply grabs the Man of Steel's defeated body and drags him into space. Barely clinging to life, Clark focuses on the image of his family, catches a second wind, and takes the brawl straight to the surface of the moon. The moon becomes a gladiator arena, but the fight is completely one-sided. Superman takes a savage beating and ends up unconscious at the bottom of a crater. Back on Earth, the panic is absolute. Jordan tries to use his super hearing, but his dad's heartbeat is just gone. The family finds the emergency beacon Lex used to lure the monster, confirming that Sam Lane is officially a hostage in all of this. Meanwhile, Lex strolls through Smallville with the swagger of a man who owns the place. And technically, he does now, having bought the town's hotel to use as his new lair. At the ranch, it feels like a premature wake. Jordan confesses to Jonathan that for the first time in his life, he saw genuine fear in his father's eyes. Holding the beacon, Lois is overwhelmed by memories of her early days with Clark at the Daily Planet. The clumsy farm boy's charm, the first displays of his powers, and the moment he shyly admitted he was a virgin before their first night together. This emotional avalanche gives Lois the strength to activate the beacon. The signal travels through space and wakes Clark up on a desolate red planet. The monster is there, waiting. In a desperate move, Superman unleashes the full extent of his power, firing his heat vision in a last-ditch attempt to destroy the creature. Unfortunately, it's not enough. The creature slams the asteroid with Superman still on it, triggering an explosion so massive that Clark is left drifting through the vacuum of space, motionless. Back on Earth, Jordan finally hears his dad's heartbeat. The relief lasts exactly 2 seconds. A deafening crash shatters the asphalt in Smallville. The monster didn't just survive, it crashed back to Earth, even larger, standing over Clark's broken body. With a crowd forming and phones recording everything, Lana tries to run damage control by claiming Superman was just a family friend, while Lois tells Jordan to fly the body to the Fortress of Solitude and pray for a miracle. But Lara's hologram delivers the worst possible news. Superman's heart has literally been ripped from his chest. Not even all the sun's energy can regenerate a missing organ. She places Clark in stasis, but the math is cold and simple. Without a heart, he can't be saved. Knowing the creature was controlled by Lex, Jordan figures out the obvious and goes after the villain to get the missing piece back. He storms into a bar playing the tough guy hero, but Lex doesn't even break a sweat. The billionaire overpowers the kid with humiliating ease, warning Jordan that he's playing in a league he isn't ready for. To make matters worse, Lois runs into Lex, and he rubs it in her face face that he knows absolutely everything. The secret identity, the super-powered kids, the whole package. Desperate, the brothers launch a suicide mission. Sarah helps Jonathan break into Lex's hotel room, but all he finds is a stalker-level murder board dedicated to destroying the Kent family. Meanwhile, Jordan tracks what he thinks is his dad's heartbeat to a Luthor Corp shipping container. It was a perfectly laid trap. Lex's goons take Jordan down with kryptonite weapons. What follows takes the villain's psychopathy to a whole new level. Lex calls Lois using a voice modulator to sound like Clark and gives her 10 seconds to choose which son lives by pressing 1 or 2. She freezes, incapable of making such a sick choice, and the timer hits 0. Inside the container, Lex looks down at a tortured Jordan, pulls Superman's beating heart out of a box, and crushes it with his foot. Grief hits Smallville hard. Without Superman, Lois tries to process the loss in her husband's old room before writing a somber article titled "A World Without Superman." The mood at home becomes unbearable when Jonathan decides to blame Jordan for their dad's death, sparking that classic sibling tension right when they need each other the most. Meanwhile, General Sam Lane doesn't have time to just mourn. He marches straight to General Hardcastle to demand the serum Bruno Mannheim used to resurrect Bizarro. We also get a surgical flashback showing Sam's priceless reaction on the day he found out his clumsy son-in-law was the Man of Steel. "I'm going to hell." The bomb drops at the farm. Jonathan fights with Lois for exposing the family's pain in the paper and, consumed by rage, punches a wooden pillar in the barn. The result? His broken hand instantly heals. Yes, in a fit of teenage angst, the kid subtly manifests super strength, heat vision, and freeze breath. Convenient? Very. But he masters it quickly and immediately flies off to show off, convinced he's his dad's new replacement. Preying on the family's vulnerability, Lex Luthor pulls strings from the shadows. He breaks into the barn and plays dirty with Jordan, showing him doctored audio where Lois supposedly chooses to save Jonathan over him in a life-or-death scenario. Jordan buys the lie completely and takes off, feeling betrayed. The episode's greatest act, however, belongs to Sam Lane. The DOD is attacked by Lex's monster, and Sam, already shot by a traitorous subordinate, makes an extreme decision. He injects himself with the serum and faces the beast head-on. He orders Lois to retreat, knowing full well he's going to die. That is the plan. His sacrifice ensures that his heart, now supercharged with the resurrection DNA, will be the engine to bring Clark back. At the Fortress of Solitude, Lara performs the impossible transplant. In the final seconds, Superman's eyes snap open. 3 weeks after returning from the dead with his father-in-law's heart beating in his chest, Clark tries to readjust to the world. Sam Lane's funeral is an intimate moment of pure grief for the family, but coming home brings temporary relief. The problem is, Clark didn't come back whole. He carries an unhealing scar and is restless, itching to go after Lex Luthor. Lois, ever the voice of reason, gives it to him straight. If Lex finds out he's alive, he'll send the creature back, and Clark is in no physical condition to survive round 2. To keep her husband busy, she suggests focusing on the boys' training. Clark takes Jordan to the Fortress of Solitude and adopts a very hands-on teaching method. He throws the kid off an ice cliff. Fortunately, desperation kicks in, and Jordan flies. But during their chase through the skies, Clark's heart goes into severe arrhythmia, and he plummets into the snow. He tries to hide it, but Jonathan, using his newly discovered super hearing, catches the slip-up. Left with no choice, Clark admits to Lois that his senses are out of whack, and he feels terrifyingly vulnerable. Meanwhile, the town tries to have a normal day with preparations for Kyle and Chrissy's wedding, but because trouble never comes alone, a pipe bursts at the courthouse, and Lois ends up offering the Kent farm for the ceremony. The pressure from a judgmental mother-in-law and how fast everything is moving gives Chrissy a panic attack, prompting her to flee, but Lois finds her and brings the journalist back down to earth. Between the brothers, the mood finally improves. Jonathan convinces Jordan to stop torturing himself over Lex's deepfake audio, and Jordan apologizes to Lois, squashing the family beef. The calm is shattered at night when Jonathan hears a fire in Metropolis. He decides to play hero and clashes with Otis, one of Lex's henchmen armed with fire gauntlets. The situation spirals out of control, but the one who shows up to save the day is Superman himself, now sporting his classic black suit. In the end, the wedding is postponed, but the party happens anyway. Everything seems fine until everyone's phones start buzzing like crazy. The whole world just found out Superman is alive. The news of the resurrection spreads and quickly reaches Lex Luthor. Staring at the Superman Lives headline is enough to drag the villain's mind 17 years into the past, recalling the day his wife handed him the divorce papers. At the time, she nailed it by saying his cold demeanor would make their daughter, Elizabeth, beg for affection, only to be rejected the exact same way. But introspection isn't Lex's strong suit, so he decides to ignore the trauma and focuses on the idea of heading to Smallville to personally deal with the reborn hero problem. At the Kent farm, Clark comes up with the most optimistic plan in the world: talk to Lex, father to father, and try to end this cycle of destruction. Lois thinks the idea is absolute suicide, reminding him that the guy not only killed Clark but also took her father's life. But she reluctantly lets him go, while rushing to the old secret DoD files for a contingency plan. She finds exactly what she needs: Elizabeth's address in Europe. The clash of the Titans happens on a deserted road. Superman swallows his pride and apologizes for the role he played in separating Lex from his daughter. Luthor's response? A wall of ice. He tells the hero to enjoy his final moments with his family, because the clock is ticking. Task failed successfully.
Enjoy the time you have left. It's running out.
Meanwhile, Lois travels to France and finds Elizabeth, who is now 6 months pregnant. She begs the young woman to intervene and stop her father's madness. Terrified, Elizabeth refuses, wanting to keep her unborn child as far away from that nightmare as possible. Out of options, Lois enters desperation mode. She goes to an abandoned overpass, activates the emergency DoD beacon, and summons the very beast that killed Clark. Jonathan arrives at the same time, but Lois orders her son to run. She stands face to face with the monster and appeals to its emotions, reminding it that it used to be a Superman with a family in another universe. For a moment, the creature hesitates, showing that a trace of humanity still exists inside. The grand emotional climax takes place in a random diner. Elizabeth decides not to ignore Lois and hits her father with a brutal ultimatum. Either he drops his vendetta once and for all to be part of his future grandson's life, or he will never see her again. Lex processes the situation, but his hatred speaks louder. He chooses vengeance, sentencing Lois Lane to pay at any cost. Outside, hidden in the shadows, Clark watches everything, knowing the final war is inevitable. Lex Luthor is on the loose, freshly shaved, and foaming with rage. After being rejected by his daughter, he throws a fit in his hotel room. But instead of going to therapy, he gathers all her letters and photos, tosses them in the trash, and sets them on fire. So much for family ties. By the time his assistant Amanda arrives, Lex has already flipped the switch. His focus now is buying land in Smallville and building a mysterious device by the end of the day. Meanwhile, at the Kent farm, Jordan is living peak superpowered adolescence. The kid is crossing the globe making rescues, racing his brother, and breaking the sound barrier in the process. Clark and Lois try to put the brakes on him because his confidence is turning into arrogance real fast. The problem is that Lex wastes no time. He corners Lana in her office, demanding she change the town's zoning laws so he can build his new headquarters. Since she refuses, Lex turns to Plan B, tracking down the landowner at a local bar and offering $10 million to every single person there if they can convince the woman to sell the farm. It's Succession-level billionaire villainy, but with a lot more physical threat. Then Clark shows up to intervene, and things get ugly. They step outside under heavy rain. Lex, who never misses a trick, turns on his mysterious device. The machine emits red sun radiation, instantly draining Superman's powers. What follows is a massacre. Lex brutally beats Clark with his bare hands, just to prove the Man of Steel can bleed and be broken like anyone else. Lois and the boys watch from afar, completely paralyzed. Back at the farm, the mood is funereal. Clark is battered and healing at a terrifyingly slow pace. It dawns on the family, as long as Luthor is out there, no one is safe. Over in Metropolis, while Amanda stitches up Lex's wounds, he gives his next order. He wants her to procure a battlesuit. Keeping a secret identity in the middle of nowhere is much harder than in a big city. After running out of a convenience store to save an airplane and returning in record time, Clark realizes the folks in Smallville are starting to put the pieces together. His solution? Make a list of all the suspects and try to convince them one by one that he's just a clumsy farmer, even going so far as to put on an Oscar-worthy performance, pretending to be in pain right in front of the football coach. But we see that this charade has always come at a steep price. In flashbacks to his Daily Planet days, we find out that Jimmy Olsen noticed Clark's lame excuses for missing softball games always coincided with with Superman's rescues. When Jimmy confronted him, Clark denied it, and that lie cost them their friendship. In the present, the weight of the secret is suffocating everyone. The boy's former teammate accuses Jonathan of having an unfair advantage.
Okay, just to keep up. But that's because you were superpowered this whole time. That's not what happened. Stop lying. I know it's true.
I'm not lying.
Yes, you are.
Kyle is selling even his grill to pay the bills, and Chrissy is forced to sell her share of the Smallville Gazette. Seeing the damage this chronic lie causes to the people around them, the Kent family reaches a consensus. No more. It's time to tell the world the truth. Except Lex Luthor has other plans. He poisons the mind of Emmett, Jonathan's ex-girlfriend's dad, who storms into the local diner armed. Determined to prove that Clark is bulletproof, he simply shoots at the guy right in front of everybody. Left with no choice, Clark tears open his shirt, revealing the suit underneath, and takes the bullet to the chest without flinching. The silence in the diner is absolute. Knowing Lex won't stop using the townspeople as pawns, Clark decides to take control of his own narrative. The next day, with the farm surrounded by reporters, he sits down for a live interview broadcast worldwide, looks right into the camera, and delivers the line it took him a lifetime to say, "My name is Clark Kent, and yes, I am Superman."
My name is Clark Kent, and yes, I am Superman.
With the biggest secret on the planet revealed, the Kent farm has basically become a military fortress to keep the paparazzi at bay. While the boys are starstruck getting texts from celebrities and dealing with hordes of fans at the convenience store, the real tension inside the house has nothing to do with aliens or reporters. Lois is waiting for her test results to see if her cancer treatment worked. Far from there, John Henry and Natalie are deep into building their armored suits for the Department of Defense. John Henry plays the hardcore drill sergeant, demanding perfection and questioning his daughter's commitment. But when an alert for a severe car crash goes off, the two suit up in their armor and pull the driver from the flames in perfect sync, proving they were born for this. At the hospital, Lois and Clark's agonizing wait finally ends, and the doctor delivers the news they had been praying to hear. Lois is cancer-free. It's a moment of pure, absolute relief. But since a protagonist's happiness is always short-lived, the celebration is cut short by the waiting room TV. Lex Luthor has gotten a wardrobe and PR makeover, trading his prison jumpsuit for a tailored suit, and is now giving an interview to a sensationalist host. The guy delivers an absolute masterclass in manipulation on national television, convincing the public that Lois knew about his innocence all along and was an accomplice to the real killer. As the cherry on top, Lex drops the perfect bait. He challenges Lois Lane to a live face-to-face debate on that very same show tonight. The game has completely changed. The entire internet already knows Superman is losing his powers. Lex Luthor leaked the hero's medical records, and Jonathan, with all the teenage rage imaginable, wants to settle this with his fists. Clark, maintaining his Boy Scout posture, shoots the idea down immediately. The problem is, the damage is already done. Even Lois's paper starts losing advertisers because of the target Lex painted on her back, while the twins become local celebrities at the town diner, even getting a dish named after them. The mood at the Smallville Gazette is heavy. Lex's assistant, Amanda, shows up to serve Lois with a lawsuit. The reason? The windows Superman broke at LexCorp. The pettiness of Luthor truly knows no bounds. As a bonus, she also casually mentions that a key witness, Cheryl, is dead. Trying to turn the tables, Clark flies to Metropolis to get inside Lex's head, but the villain just laughs in his face, mocks his aging heart, and confesses he got the medical data by hacking John Henry's suit. The message is clear. Lex is going to destroy everything Clark loves. Lois almost throws in the towel, but Clark reminds her that they've already beaten cancer and death itself. With her batteries recharged, she goes to the prison to visit Bruno Mannheim. Playing the card that Lex will soon go after his son Mateo, Lois manages to get the mobster to talk. Bruno reveals the villain's pattern. Lex used Cheryl in the past and discarded her, which is exactly what he's doing to Amanda now. At the Fortress of Solitude, Clark realizes his sons will never reach their full strength because of their human DNA. The solution? Train them to fight as a team, serving as a punching bag for the two of them himself. But the training is interrupted by a massive tremor. A mutated, roided-out Doomsday bursts out of the mine straight into the center of Smallville. Lois still tries to reason with the monster, to no avail. Superman joins the fight and takes a historic beating, realizing he can't win through brute force. course, he says goodbye to his family and is grabbed by the creature, which hurtles toward the moon at full speed. A classic relationship talk between Lana and John Henry at the local bar is rudely interrupted when Doomsday simply crashes through the brick wall. John Henry runs to try and help. While out on the streets, Lois gets into a shouting match with Amanda, throwing in her face how stupid it was to trust a psychopath like Lex. Superman is taking a pitifully brutal beating. Jonathan and Jordan arrive for the rescue, but Clark, running on pure paternal instinct, tells them both to run. Lois, however, finds her bloodied husband and lays down the law. She was the one who sent the boys, and he needs to accept that he can't carry the world on his shoulders alone. John Henry and Lana show up with Salvation, an experimental magnetic bomb. The plan requires teamwork. The twins fly around acting as live bait, luring the monster to Main Street. John throws the bomb at the creature's head. Just to be sure, Clark carries Doomsday out into space and hurls him straight into the sun, disintegrating the threat once and for all. Down below, Lex realizes he lost his pet monster and decides to take matters into his own hands. He tries to blow Amanda up with a missile, but she is saved and reveals that Milton Fine was the one who stole the blueprints for John's suit. Lex then goes after the Kent family, grabbing Jordan by the throat. Lois distracts him and seizes the opportunity to attach the last bomb to the villain's suit. The explosion is massive, but Lex's armor holds up. That's when Superman returns. The battle in the skies is brutal, and Lex uses his kryptonite-powered strength. In an absolutely insane move, Clark rips the kryptonite bolts out of his own chest, enduring agonizing pain to regain his full strength, and sends Lex crashing back down to Earth with a devastating punch. Game over. A year later, the mood is peaceful. Lana and John Henry get married, with Lois officiating the ceremony and Kyle watching without any hard feelings. But the story takes a time jump, narrated by an elderly Clark. He lived 32 more years of happiness. He watched his sons grow up and start families of their own, until Lois's cancer returns, and she passes away peacefully, surrounded by her loved ones. The Man of Steel spends his final days in the company of a golden retriever named Crypto. When his heart finally stops beating from old age, the last thing Clark sees before passing is the image of a young Lois Lane, wearing the exact same red dress from the day they met.